As for the press, we defend the people's right to know almost everything. For a nation ignorant and free never was and never will be a democracy. We know that information is golden. It's the sine qua non of giving people choices before they are faced with a fait accompli.
هيلين إيميليا توماس، أيقونة الصحافة وسيدتها الأولى، الساعية لكشف الحقيقة بأي ثمن. هيلين توماس، العربية الأمريكية الرائدة في فتح أبواب العمل الصحفي أمام المرأة. هيلين توماس، عميدة الصحافة القوية المتواضعة الحازمة المرحة. كيف نستطيع رواية حكاية إنسانة أكبر من الحياة ذاتها؟ سنحاول.
My parents came from Tripoli, Syria, and it was Syria at the time, but after World War I, the French and the British divided up the whole Middle East, and it became a part of Lebanon. They came over on a boat, and I know it was very tough for all immigrants. I mean, it was basically steerage. It was not the Queen Mary. I was born in Winchester, Kentucky, and most of my siblings were born there too, except my youngest sister, who was born in Detroit. I was 4 years old when we moved to Detroit. My father had two brothers, had already moved on to Michigan, and we basically followed him. And we had 8 children in the family at that time. I think that I was very, very lucky to be born in the family I was born in, because my father and mother believed in education above all for their children.
برغم عدم معرفتهما القراءة أو الكتابة، حرص والدا هيلين توماس على تربية أطفالهما على حب العلم والمعرفة، وزرعا قيم الطموح والعمل الجاد في هيلين وأشقائها.
I had great teachers in my older siblings. They shared the literature, Shakespeare. My sister was terrific on that. And my brothers. We all were going to be Americans. We were all assimilated. I grew up on a street with German family on one side, Italian on the other, and we all cared about each other. There was no difference.
أمضت هيلين سنوات تعليمها الرسمي في المدارس الحكومية العامة في مدينة ديترويت.
Who likes studying, really? But I did study. I knew that I liked to excel, and I liked to be recognized. But I certainly was not a sensation. And I loved history, and I thought that that was the greatest thing. But I hated arithmetic and math. I couldn't add 2 and 2.
في هذا المكان أدركت هيلين مبكراً أنها تريد أن تصبح مراسلة صحفية، وذلك خلال سنوات دراستها الثانوية، فبدأت تنشر مقالاتها في الصحيفة الطلابية في مدرسة إيسترن هاي سكول، حيث لاقت تلك المقالات استحسان مدرسيها.
When I saw my byline for the first time in a high school paper, and I realized, I decided then that would be my career.
ورافق حلم الصحافة هيلين توماس حين التحقت بكلية الآداب في جامعة وين ستيت يونيفرسيتي، وبدأت بنشر مقالاتها في الصحيفة الجامعية.
We had news writing courses, but I was not a part of any great big department. Even in the university where I went, they didn't have journalism separated out. We did work on the school paper, and on the college paper and so forth. I didn't know any great journalists at that time. I was certainly watching and reading newspapers, Edward R. Murrow and Ernie Pyle. I was reading them every day. And Murrow, of course, listening to his broadcasts.
The understanding was complete. The intercom came to life, and Jock said, 2 aircraft on the port beam. Jack in the tail said, "Okay, sir."
I don't think you trained to be a journalist. We were part of the Great Depression. We were part of World War II. I mean, what more education would you need? We always talked politics in our home, and I loved it, and we all did. Some of my brothers were more Republican, but most of the girls were Democrats.
واستمرت هيلين بالعمل في الصحيفة، لكن عملها هناك كان تطوعيا من دون أي مردود مالي. أما أول عمل مدفوع الأجر زاولته هيلين فكان عملها كسكرتيرة لدى شقيقها متري.
He had a gas station after he came back from the war. He was a colonel in the army. And he hired me to work for him, and I was terrible. I'm not a good secretary at all. He did me a favor. Well, I was in college, and then I came to Washington.
عام 1942 وبعد حصولها على الدرجة الجامعية الأولى توجهت هيلين توماس إلى واشنطن دي سي بحجة زيارة ابنة عمها، لكن السبب الحقيقي كان السعي لتحقيق حلمها بالعمل في الصحافة في العاصمة الأمريكية.
I knew I wanted to be a reporter, and that's where you go. You go where the action is. I didn't want to cover fires in Detroit or some police covered crime, I should say. I loved history, and I certainly wanted to be in a place where major decisions were being made about the world. This is where all the decisions were being made for humanity.
بالرغم من أن هيلين توماس أحبت واشنطن كثيرا واعتبرتها جنة الصحافة، إلا أنها صدمت بالتمييز العنصري الذي يعانيه السود في المدينة.
Having come from Detroit, which I think was fairly desegregated at that time, so it was shocking. Sleepy southern town. It was very discriminating, and it was very bad for blacks who were mistreated. That blacks could not go to hotels. They couldn't sit down in a snack bar. They had to carry their coffee out or wet sandwiches out. They were treated, there was a black section of town. I would go to the nightclubs because they had the best entertainers.
وكان الأمر الأشد صدمة لهيلين أن يمارس معظم المواطنين البيض هذا التمييز ضد السود كأمر طبيعي ومعتاد.
I think every citizen should do a lot against any discrimination of the society.
في أيامها الأولى أقامت هيلين عند ابنة عمها وبدأت رحلة البحث عن عمل. في هذا المكان المعروف الآن باسم وارنر ثياتر حصلت هيلين على أول وظيفة لها في واشنطن في عمل أبعد ما يكون عن الصحافة.
I was a hostess, and I was horrible. I tried to treat people fairly, and not people who were handing you money to get in front. I learned a lot, and the bosses hated me. I learned that there's a lot of discrimination in business. And I was very happy the day I got the job, I was about to be fired, because they thought I was terrible. I didn't smile enough. I went from newspaper to newspaper and said I wanted to be a copy boy. And gradually those jobs began to open up because they were drafting every young man who had a pulse. If he was breathing, he was going to war. Journalism was not the big deal for women, not a profession that everybody wanted to be in. It is now.
بعد أشهر من البحث وجدت هيلين توماس فرصة عمل كموظفة طباعة في صحيفة واشنطن ديلي نيوز.
I was a copy girl on a paper. It's now defunct. You're just a messenger. Run, get coffee, cut copy, tune in. It was gut work, but it was worth it. To be in the presence, be in the environment. I was there when Ernie Powell came to the office. One of the greatest war correspondents because he was so human.
وكانت أولى مهمات هيلين في عملها في الصحيفة مرتبطة بضحايا الحرب العالمية الثانية.
War is horrible. Really is. I hate war. Well, when you're starting out, I mean, they give you all the throwaways. But at the Washington Daily News, I had to call the families because the Pentagon the Army would put out big lists of people who died. You had to call the families of our area, Washington. And we were supposed to be the last to tell them, the press, and that you'd hear them screaming. And you'd be, unfortunately, sometimes we'd be the first to inform them.
بعد عدة أشهر من عملها في صحيفة واشنطن ديلي نيوز تمت ترقية هيلين، لكن سعادتها بالموقع الجديد لم تدم طويلا.
And became a reporter in 1943 for the Daily News. And then we all were fired, eight of us, 8 reporters, because we went on strike for $5 more. I was making $17.50 a week. Then I went to the press building, knocked on doors, and got another job for UPI, which was owned by the same organization, Scripps Howard. And it gave me my big chance.
وهكذا بدأت رحلة هيلين توماس المهنية مع يونايتد بريس التي ستصبح فيما بعد UPI، رحلة ستمتد إلى ما يزيد عن 55 عاما.
It was awesome to be in that office. I was very lucky to have that job and to start out in journalism.
خلال السنوات اللاحقة اقتصر عمل هيلين توماس على كتابة تقارير ومقالات عن موضوعات تعنى بشؤون المرأة. عام 1955 شهد نقلة نوعية في دور هيلين المهني، أسندت إليها مهمة التغطية الصحفية لوزارة العدل الأمريكية. وسرعان ما شمل عملها الصحفي تغطية أخبار ونشاطات العديد من الوزارات والوكالات الفيدرالية في العاصمة واشنطن.
I was always working on deadlines. It's much nicer to have feature deadline, but I have other things interfering. I don't think I was a great journalist in any sense, but I knew that I would love to be there. I think being curious about life, being curious about government, being inquisitive, I realized that was my only talent. I met great journalists, so I had great masters to learn from, but I didn't set any as a role model. My husband was a great writer, my late husband. He did the wrap-up. He stood over a teletype machine, dictated the end of the war, World War II, which is really phenomenal. But only a wire service person could do it. He could dictate 3 bulletin leads in a matter of seconds. And my boss won the Pulitzer in Dallas. Merriman Smith was his name. He was an incredible reporter. He was a tyrant, but he was a great newspaper man. He wasn't a tyrant, but he had contempt for most people, I think.
وكان لماريمان سميث دورا هاما في تطور دور هيلين في UPI، فهو من منحها فرصة الاقتراب من المؤسسة الرئاسية حين كلفها بالتغطية الصحفية للرئيس جون كينيدي وعائلته خلال إجازتهم في فلوريدا بعيد الانتخابات الرئاسية عام 1960. وخلال تشرين الثاني من ذات العام غطت هيلين توماس أخبار العائلة الأولى عندما رزق الرئيس كينيدي بابنه جون. ومكثت هيلين التي لا تعرف اليأس يومين متواصلين خارج مستشفى جامعة جورج تاون وفي ممراته تتحين الفرص للاقتراب من الرئيس المنتخب وطرح أسئلتها عليه. أما الفرصة الحقيقية التي سنحت لهيلين توماس لتغطية البيت الأبيض وتحقيق قفزة في عملها الصحفي فقد كانت خلال أحد المؤتمرات الصحفية للرئيس كينيدي.
Boss was out of town, and he was the one who ended the first, would end a news conference thanking the president, saying, "Thank you, Mr. President." Well, I had to do that during a President Kennedy news conference. It was limited, the news conference was limited to a 1/2 hour, so I wore two watches, and when it came time to end the news conference, I got up reluctantly because I knew everybody had a question, would be very angry, but I got up and said to President Kennedy, "Thank you, Mr. President."
Thank you, Helen.
Helen, they were so happy getting them off the hook. I knew that all the reporters would be angry at me because all came armed with questions that they didn't have a chance to ask. And I don't blame them. I was a man who came to dinner. Somehow, well, their families were, the Kennedy family became of great interest. They thought we'd keep a woman there. Well, I covered men, women, children, pets, cats, dogs, everything else that moved in the White House. They didn't expect me to stay that long, but I decided I should. I felt I was needed. It isn't the question of ego. Women were trying to get a foot in the door. Well, I think that they had been let down after World War II, that they had really covered all these beats. And right after the war, they were immediately fired because on the assumption that these young men would want to come back to $20 a week jobs. It was such a fallacy. So women have filled in many, many times in real crisis times, but they've never been appreciated. But as a woman, I was really felt discriminated against because when I started covering the White House in 1961, I could belong to the White House Correspondents Association, but I couldn't go to their annual dinner because I was a woman, and they had never had women attending for 50 years. And I said, so what? we've always done it this way. I said, yeah, well, you're not going to do it that way anymore. I mean, it was so flagrant. I mean, there's something called justice, I think. By this time, I was president of the Women's National Press Club, and I decided, along with many of my colleagues, a cabal, that this was impossible. So the next year, we went to Kennedy, and we said, you shouldn't go to this dinner if we can't go. And he was guest of honor. And Kennedy went along with it. He used to point to me as one of the culprits. Of course, we shamed the men. It's unbelievable, the kind of discrimination. The men finally said the scales began to fall from their eyes. I mean, they didn't realize how discriminatory they had been. But they were going toe-to-toe with women reporters who even beat them at times.
كان لوالدي هيلين وتربيتها العائلية الأثر الأكبر في صقل شخصيتها وشعور الاعتزاز لديها بكونها امرأة. لكنها أيضا استلهمت وتعلمت قوة الشخصية من بعض ممثلات السينما الأمريكية.
I liked certain actresses who represented something very strong. All the Betty Davis films. I learned a lot from the movies. I think most children do. How to behave like a woman. How to walk. How to be in charge.
وقد كان لهيلين توماس دور ريادي في فتح الأبواب الموصدة أمام المرأة في مجال العمل الصحفي. فخلال السنوات اللاحقة كانت هيلين سباقة في شغل مناصب وأدوار لم تشغلها امرأة في تاريخ الصحافة. فقد كانت أول امرأة في الفريق الصحفي للبيت الأبيض، وأول امرأة تتولى رئاسة مكتب UPI في البيت الأبيض، وأول امرأة مسؤولة في نادي الصحافة الوطني في واشنطن، وأول امرأة عضو ولاحقا رئيسة لجمعية مراسلي البيت الأبيض، وأول امرأة عضو في نادي غريدرون الذي كانت أبوابه مغلقة أمام الصحفيات لما يزيد عن 80 عاما والقائمة تطول.
If it wasn't for Helen and the other brave women back over 40 years ago, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be here as a woman president of the National Press Club. And she really was the person that opened the doors for me and for the other women who have been president of the National Press Club.
Her character, her honesty, her scholarship, her profession was unique. And as many people said, she didn't break the glass ceiling, she shattered it for all women. And every woman and every man owes a debt of gratitude for her to do that. As an Arab American, it's particularly fitting for us because we had few heroes and she was the shero. And will always be that first and most important Arab American woman in the United States. She is our First Lady.
ولم تقتصر إنجازات هيلين توماس على شق الطريق أمام المرأة، بل تعدتها إلى خلق معايير جديدة في مهنة الصحافة من خلال تغطيتها لعشرة رؤساء أمريكيين متعاقبين.
You, John Fitzgerald Kennedy, do solemnly swear.
I, John Fitzgerald Kennedy, do solemnly swear
That you will faithfully execute.
That I will faithfully execute
The office of President of the United States.
of President of the United States.
and will, to the best of my ability,
And will, to the best of my ability,
Preserve, protect, and defend.
preserve, protect, and defend
the Constitution of the United States.
the Constitution of the United States.
So help me God.
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 Congratulations, Mr. President.
I think that presidents should have great goals and they have a great opportunity to accomplish them. They should be attuned to the man on the woman on the street. They should be listening to the people. Sometimes the president gets so remote that they don't understand what's going on. They know what they are well meant and whatever they want to do, but they aren't listening.
وخلال السنوات ومن مقعدها الأمامي في المقر الصحفي للبيت الأبيض أصبحت هيلين توماس أيقونة لأعلى معايير العمل الصحفي في تغطية الرؤساء الأمريكيين وسياساتهم.
I took the advantage of asking notables, big public figures, asking them tough questions. I think that's my reputation. I was very lucky to be a part and ask first or second questions at presidential news conferences, and I think that was my supreme advantage.
I have a two-part question. How would you assess the credibility of your own administration?
The public has the right to know, and people should be looking for the truth, certainly journalists, to provide and inform people.
A wonderful speech for Helen.
تلك هي مهمة الصحافة كما تراها هيلين، الأمر الذي تعلمه منها صديقها المقرب الصحفي سام دونالدسون الذي يعمل في شبكة ABC التلفزيونية.
And Helen, I've got to say to you tonight, I've learned most of what I know there from you. You have to take the blame for that. But I'm going to move on. Presidents come and presidents go, and reporters like me come and we go. But Helen Thomas, we need you to stay forever. And I hope you do. Thank you.
I think that press conferences are absolutely indispensable in our society. Presidential press conferences. People have a right to know, and reporters have the right to ask. Ask a president why. Ask what. People will understand his actions. You should never blow the right to ask a president a question. That's a great privilege, especially in democracies. I think we have the right to know almost everything. I mean, maybe not something that might really shatter national security, but I don't think there are many things like that.
Now, I will be happy to take your questions, and Helen, we begin with you.
Helen?
Ms. Thomas.
All right, Helen, this is my inaugural moment here.
I think you always feel nervous when you ask any president a question. You always feel a certain trepidation. Of course. Not enough to not ask the question.
Helen?
President, do you know of any funds, any money, Whitewater seems to be about money, having gone into any of
وبسؤالها عما يدور في ذهنها عندما تصيغ أسئلتها أثناء استجوابها للرؤساء والمسؤولين، أجابت هيلين توماس مازحة.
I thought of the worst thing I could ask. and I thought if I had the nerve to ask it. And I usually did.
Why do you refuse to respect the wall between the church and state? And you know that the mixing of religion and government for centuries has led to slaughter. I mean, the very fact that a country has...
I think the president should be intimidated. Otherwise, you'd think you're a pushover.
Helen, I strongly respect the separation of church and state.
You wouldn't have a religious office in the White House if you did.
I didn't get to finish my answer in all due respect.
I worked for a wire service where if your mother said she loved you, you know, you just have to ask questions and doubt it in a way that it's so silly. I mean, but you really, really had to put it to the test. You had to put your own integrity to the test.
تقول هيلين إن أسئلتي تعكس ما يدور في ذهن الناس العاديين، ولو سبب ذلك عدم الارتياح لدى الرؤساء فليكن. وعدم الارتياح هو أقل ما يمكن أن يقال عن شعور السكرتير الصحفي للبيت الأبيض عندما تحاصر هيلين توماس بأسئلتها.
How so? Like calling reporters the night before to tell them they're going to be called on? That is shocking.
We've had this discussion ad nauseum, and
of course you would, because you don't have any answers.
Because I didn't know you were going to ask a question, Helen. Go ahead.
Well, you should have.
Wait till see if. Thank you for your support.
I'm going to wait for Helen. That's good. Have you emailed your question today?
I don't have to email it. I can tell you right now what I want to know.
I don't doubt that at all, Helen. I don't doubt that at all.
Press secretaries detested me. They should only tell the truth, but of course they won't last long. They have to follow orders. They think mostly you're protecting the president. I'm sure they put me in a special category. Not loved. That's okay. That's the way it should be. I don't want them to like me. That's not why I'm there. I didn't get into journalism to be loved. Is the U.S. going to emphasize to Israel that the Palestinians... I think it was my job to, once you had the great opportunity to ask a president or a public figure a question who has a lot of power in this country, they should be asked the right questions. I think any time you walk through those gates, you have a sense of history. History is made every day at the White House, good and bad.
يقال إن الصحافة تمثل المسودة الأولى لكتابة التاريخ، لكن هيلين توماس دونت تاريخ المؤسسة الرئاسية الأمريكية في كتاباتها وانطباعاتها منذ أن بدأت بتغطية البيت الأبيض في عهد الرئيس المفضل لديها جون كينيدي.
Vice President Johnson, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Chief Justice.
It was a great day. It was so cold. People were exhilarated. A new spirit, a new frontier. I think that this is what Kennedy always generated, and the Kennedy team. I think he opened the doors for actually not thinking of government as the enemy, that it could do everything for people. A sense of awareness, civil rights, saying we're going to land men on the moon in a decade. He did it. He didn't live to see it. He set the groundwork for equality. I think raising the academic standards, excellence became the most criteria that we could achieve excellence. Knowing that Kennedy had been to war, knew the horror of war, created the Peace Corps, he said really that the sky was not the limit, that man could achieve anything and keep learning. Never saw a piece of paper that he didn't pick it up to read. I think he inspired young people to go into public service. He was the most inspirational president I've ever covered.
بالرغم من عدم مرافقتها للرئيس كينيدي في رحلته الأخيرة إلى ولاية تكساس، إلا أن هيلين شاركت في التغطية الصحفية لعودة جثمانه إلى واشنطن في ذلك اليوم المأساوي من تشرين الثاني لعام 63.
I was in a restaurant with my rival and best friend, Francis Lewin, of Associated Press. I worked for UPI. And I heard this radio, and I thought, well, it's not football season. It was November. and it was Friday. So I went over to the next table and I said, you know, this radio, what's going on? And they said, Kennedy has been assassinated. Well, Fran Lewin and I both jumped. We left the bill with Jackie's press secretary, ran out. I went one way and she went the other way to our offices. I walked into my office and the editor said, you're on vacation. I said, no, I'm not. He said, okay, go to Andrews Air Force Base.
Here at Andrews Air Force Base, just outside Washington.
The president forget momentarily, the lights went out here at the Air Force Base. The hundreds of reporters couldn't see anything. Now the lights are back on.
Well, our great reporter Merriman Smith, who won the Pulitzer Prize for the assassination, was on that plane. He wrote not only about the assassination, but he also attended the swearing in on the plane for Johnson as the new president.
Behind the casket is
Well, when the plane arrived, I mean, Jackie came down with her pink Chanel-style suit, bloodied, and Bobby was there to meet her and watch that. And then I had a telephone in my hand and I started dictating masses of copy from Merriman Smith on the assassination and on the swearing in of the new president. Well, I was crying half the time when I was dictating. I thought it was such a tragedy. And then I was told to go back to the White House, and I was there when they brought the body back. By this time, Jackie Kennedy had arrived, and the chief of protocol said to her what he could do for her, and she said, find out how Lincoln was buried. I can't compare it to any presidential death except for FDR. Our country knew, everyone cried. Not everyone, Republicans didn't cry, I don't think. But Democrats certainly did, and blacks, especially in Washington, were drenched in tears. I was on the steps of St. Matthew's Cathedral, and I shouted to our photographer when John was saluting the casket, coffin, and they got the best picture, photo of that scene, the little boy saluting his father. And then the funeral procession proceeded to Arlington, and Jackie walked ahead of all the heads of state who had come in for the funeral. Walking ahead of de Gaulle takes some guts.
For me, it is a deep personal tragedy. I know that the world shares the sorrow that Mrs. Kennedy and her family bear. I will do my best. That is all I can do.
استمرت هيلين توماس بتغطية البيت الأبيض في المرحلة الانتقالية إثر اغتيال كندي.
Johnson had been preparing all of his life to be president. He took over, he knew what to do. Kept Congress informed, kept writing letters to the Kennedy family, reassured them they could stay in the White House longer. And I think he was a total pro.
I sometimes think that these press conferences can be conducted just as accurately and perhaps as effectively in the President's office, but I try to give you a variety, and as I told you in the beginning, I always...
اتسمت علاقة الرئيس جونسون بالصحافة بتواتر بين الحب والكراهية.
This is Johnson would tell you anything, and then he would say it's all off the record. So you're so busy writing notes, and he would see that. It was a kind of a fiasco, but we knew that he really wanted the word out. but not attributed to him. So we found ways to write it without attributing it to him, but everybody knew it was Johnson. You had to be an athlete to cover the White House. Johnson was nonstop. And you also had to climb every mountain with Lady Bird, which of course I'm not up to and never was. We went to Red Mountains and we forded every stream. And all I can say is I got into, I was in a photo in Sports Illustrated in one of those rubber rafts going down the Snake River. Nobody looked more miserable than me on that rubber raft. That was not me in any sense of the word.
كان ليندون جونسون من الرؤساء المفضلين لدى هيلين من حيث سياساته وإنجازاته المحلية.
On the domestic side, he was tremendous. He preserved the Medicare, Medicaid, the Civil Rights Act, voting rights for blacks for the first time in history, public housing, environmental laws, education, pouring in money from Head Start, which was pre-kindergarten, to college. He was an educator. He believed that that was the one thing that you could really help to cross the lines, that it was a question of eternity. It was great because he had been a teacher. He'd been a teacher on the border of Texas and saw the Mexican children and taught many of them. And he used to say, when I was a Mexican school teacher, and I said, you weren't a Mexican school teacher, you were an American school teacher. I went on like that. But he was very proud, and he did everything he could, I think, to push the whole domestic agenda. His Waterloo was foreign policy in Vietnam. I hated that war. And I was loud-mouthed about it, too. And I said, why? That this is awful, terrible.
I do think our purposes and objectives are beyond any question. I do believe that America will stand united behind her men that are there. And I plan, as long as I am president, to see that our forces are strong enough.
Johnson tried to defend his position, of course. It really took him out of the play. When the generals came back and said, we need more and more troops, 240,000 more troops, they said. That was the end for Johnson. He knew that was over. It's all over. You couldn't do that. By this time, everyone was in the streets.
Good evening, my fellow Americans. Tonight I want to speak to you of peace in Vietnam and Southeast Asia.
I must say that our office, UPI, had gotten word that something dramatic was going to happen at the end of the speech.
I shall not seek, and I will not accept, the nomination of my party for another term as your president.
Standing in the doorway when he announced he would not run, I mean, it was breathtaking. It was electrifying. But we knew that our offices were getting it on television. But it was a flash, really, not a bulletin. It was a tremendous story.
إثر انتخابات عام 68 تولى الرئاسة ريتشارد نيكسون الذي تصفه هيلين كأحد أكثر الشخصيات مأساوية في السياسة الأمريكية.
I, Richard Billhouse Nixon, do solemnly swear
that you will faithfully execute the office
that that I will faithfully execute the office
of President of the United States.
Of President of the United States.
And will to the best.
Tricky Dick. Nobody trusted him, or his Republicans did. He was considered very deceptive. And I think that none of us really liked him because we had watched him from the moment he went into politics, and he always seemed to have a double life.
في مذكراتها ديتلاين البيت الأبيض تقول هيلين توماس: في تغطيتي الصحفية للرؤساء بقدر حرصي على الدقة في مراسلاتي وكتاباتي بقدر ما حاولت أن أكون متعاطفة معهم أحيانا، فهم في النهاية بشر مثلنا. فبالرغم من كون نيكسون واحدا من أقل الرؤساء تفضيلا لدى هيلين، إلا أنها حاولت أن ترى الوجه الجيد فيه خصوصا في بداية رئاسته.
I think he had some sympathy for the poor because he had been poor. His mother was a Quaker. She was anti-war. I remember going to the rest home where his mother was, and when Nixon was leaving, he said, "Now, Mother, never give up." And she rose herself on the pillow and she said, "Now, Dick, don't you ever give up." It was, they had a bond. He did some good, creating the Environmental Protection Office and a few things. He tried to help in the terms of poverty, transforming the country, but didn't go anywhere.
عام 1970 أصبحت هيلين توماس كبيرة مراسلي UPI في البيت الأبيض، وهو منصب لم تشغله امرأة من قبل. ولاحقا أصبحت أول امرأة ترأس جمعية مراسلي البيت الأبيض، وأول صحفية في نادي الصحافة القومي الذي اقتصرت عضويته على الرجال منذ تأسيسه. عام 71 وخلال حفل أقامه الرئيس نيكسون لتكريم المراسل دوغلاس كورنيل لمناسبة تقاعده من وكالة أسوشييتد بريس، فاجأت السيدة الأولى بات نيكسون الحضور بإعلان خطوبة كورنيل على هيلين توماس. وقد تزوجا في تشرين الأول من العام ذاته. لم يكن لزواج هيلين والتغيير في حياتها الشخصية أي أثر على برنامجها اليومي في البيت الأبيض.
When I was with the wire service, I would go with the president wherever he went. I'd go at least, try to get there by at least 5:30. That's the time you should be there. Half the world is making trouble around the world.
You get a little rest today? 1 hour. Me too.
عام 73 كانت هيلين توماس ضمن الفريق الصحفي الذي رافق الرئيس نيكسون في زيارته التاريخية إلى الصين.
And every reporter in Washington wanted to be on that trip. I was very lucky. I was one of 3 women who were assigned to cover it. I did the print, Barbara Walters did TV, and another woman by the name of Faye Wells did radio, and that was it. Everything was a story. How they looked, what they wore, what they ate. How they learned everything, were able to copy everything. Satellites and everything else, which they were not familiar with.
In the future, perhaps as a result of the beginning that we have made on this journey, that many Americans.
8 days was a magnificent obsession. And every reporter had, every 2 reporters had a spy on them to make sure that they were seeing the right things.
مع استمرار الحرب في فيتنام، صعدت هيلين توماس من انتقادها لسياسات الرئيس نيكسون وفريقه، خصوصا وزير الخارجية هنري كيسنجر.
Kissinger, incapable of telling the truth, fascinating, charming man, full of himself, big ego. Kissinger was always nice to me. I don't know why. I was taunting him in the 73 war. I said, I think I called him everything on Air Force One when he came. He looked at me like, but he never took it out on me, as far as I know. He always wanted to be Secretary of State, I think. He pushed William Rogers, who was Secretary of State, aside. He even didn't tell him he had planned a trip to China. They left Rogers in the cold. It was unbelievable. I think that Kissinger had its own idea of American rules. He preceded the neocons. He was terrible on Vietnam, caused many deaths. No remorse, I don't think.
Over the past several weeks, you have heard a number of reports on TV, radio, and in your newspapers on the situation in Southeast Asia. I think the time has come for me as president.
He had promised to end the war in his campaign in 1968. 5 years later, we were still bombing hell out of Vietnam. It really ended in the Ford administration, his successor. I think Nixon knew it was a no-win situation, but it's very difficult to get out of that for an American president. It's interpreted as cowardice, but it wasn't cowardice, it was good sense. I mean, the protests in the country were against him. He called me the night that he went to the Lincoln Memorial because Merriman Smith had died, killed himself, and he wanted to express his sorrow for that. But he went to the Lincoln Memorial, and students there talked to him, and it was the beginning of the end for him. He knew that.
لكن رئاسة نيكسون لم تسقط بسبب الحرب الدائرة على بعد آلاف الأميال في جنوب شرق آسيا، بل نتيجة أعمال التنصت على الحزب الديمقراطي في بناية ووترغيت على بعد ميل واحد من البيت الأبيض.